Now here with all the stories making the headlines this Thursday, it's the ITV Lunchtime News.
One of the biggest names in British television, Sir Michael Parkinson, has died.
I think that you win a lot of your fights as well as in the ring, outside the ring as well.
In a career spanning decades, the king of the chat show interviewed the world's greatest stars and became one himself.
I would say definitely authentic. There's nothing phony about him at all. And he was a good friend, and when he got in the studio, he was very professional.
We look back at some of his most memorable moments, also this lunchtime. Top A-level results in England fall as marking returns to the pre-pandemic era. Should you be fined for this? The drive to get loud vehicles off the road. And celebrating a historic final, pubs asked the government to loosen licensing laws on Sunday.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Yasmin Bodalbhai.
Hello, good afternoon. He interviewed many of the world's biggest stars, but he became one of television's most famous faces. Sir Michael Parkinson has died at the age of 88. His family said he passed away peacefully at home last night. Affectionately known as Parky, his chat show career spanned several decades. Lucy Watson now on the legendary broadcaster who will be remembered as one of the greatest interviewers of our age.
With him on a Saturday night was where you wanted to be. Michael Parkinson set the standard for what a television chat show should be.
Welcome, please, the Prime Minister, Tony Blair.
From politics to showbiz, he could shift seamlessly. With a warmth and a twinkle, Parky could be reassuring.
I think they're pleased to see you. Did you get that impression?
He was a Yorkshireman who interviewed famous people for a living.
No, I'm just kidding.
I just imagine Barnes is a bit like Michigan.
No, it's lovely, but...
Who died last night surrounded by his family.
Well, he was a friend, and he listened to everybody. That was the thing. Mind you, when we were together, then he was a good chatter, and I was a listener.
Michael Parkinson was a journalist first, though, the son of a coal miner with 2 O-levels. Only later did he branch into television, part of the TV AM team.
It was very much the star lineup of a famous fight when commercial breakfast television went on the air.
His father encouraged a career far away from the pits, but instilled in him a love of cricket.
Jeffrey, hello, my old friend.
Michael Parkinson had a talent for it, with dreams of turning professional, a love he shared with famous fellow teammates at Barnsley Cricket Club.
I'm not going to argue with you.
You're not as dumb as you look.
And he was a sport lover. His interview with boxer Muhammad Ali, his favourite in a career that spanned 7 decades. In that time, the presenter interviewed more than 2,000 people and filmed 600 episodes of his show Parkinson. It was journalism twinned with much hilarity. He had an inimitable style. Today, tributes have been paid by the BBC's Director General Tim Davie, saying truly one of a kind, an incredible broadcaster and journalist who will be hugely missed. Nick Robinson, the Radio 4 presenter, described him as the greatest interviewer of our age, who owned Saturday night TV year after year. And Stephen Fry said, unlike most people, he was always 100% himself, on camera and off. For his skills as a broadcaster, he was made a CBE in 2000 and then knighted in 2008.
at the same time.
Do they think you're too pushy, perhaps? Is that what they think?
A bit too pushy?
Sir Michael Parkinson was fluent and affable, but didn't let matters go. Some interviews almost as famous as he was.
In other words, if you were me, what would you do now?
We'll just wrap it up.
Celebrities used to be mysterious, their lives never on display, until Michael Parkinson got to them. He could make questions seem like conversations. People wanted to tell him things. Here was the grandfather of the nation. Michael Parkinson, a man who smiled and laughed easily in the company of anyone with a flair you can't learn.
Sir Michael Parkinson, whose death was announced today. Hundreds of thousands of teenagers received their A-level results today. There was a fall in the number of top grades compared to last year, and the lowest overall pass rate since 2008. Well, this year A-levels in England were marked according to pre-pandemic grading standards. And there were differences in the grades awarded in Wales and Northern Ireland. We'll be live there in a moment. But first, our political reporter, Yasmin Chilashi, on the results in England.
Economics, come on! Across the country, happiness and disappointment as the percentage of top A-level grades fell. These are the first set of formal exam results issued to students after receiving their teacher-assessed GCSEs during COVID. Exam regulator Ofqual said it wanted to return results to pre-pandemic levels, but for many, today has been an emotional rollercoaster.
Psychology was supposed to be my highest grade, and it seems to be 2 grades below what I expected.
Is that good?
That's a big smile. What have you got? 2 A stars and 2 A's.
I didn't do well in that exam, so I was bothered, but I got the grade I wanted.
I was a bit nervous. I literally couldn't sleep last night. Went to bed at 2, I cleaned the whole house at 1 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. But I'm happy with my grades.
Overall, 79% of young people were accepted into their first choice university, 2% lower than last year but above pre-pandemic levels. 27.2% of young people achieved an A or an A star, while 76% scored a C or above, again down on last year but higher than in 2019. In the government's flagship T-levels, just over 90% of young people achieved a pass or better, and over 250,000 students were awarded technical and vocational certificates. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan defended the government's decision to return to pre-COVID grading in England, even as Wales and Northern Ireland recorded a higher proportion of top marks.
We thought that the fairest thing to do actually was to go back to what is the fairest system, which is exams, but also to make sure that those exams hold, those qualifications hold their value. You know, GCSEs and A-levels are highly regarded, but, you know, in the pandemic years we did have 45% getting A's and A stars, so we wanted to make sure that we got back to normal.
But Labour argue that students have been let down by the government.
We did, and we do need to see a return to a pre-pandemic system. So I think it is right that we move back towards that exams-based system. There were challenges that came of a system where schools were determining grades. But alongside that, we needed a much more comprehensive plan to support young people coming out of the pandemic, and the government have failed a generation of young people on that front.
UCAS said nearly 1 in 10 students failed to get into their first choice or insurance university, a higher proportion than last year. Those students will now have to scramble to secure their place in clearing. Yasmin Chilashi, ITV News, Westminster.
And we can go live to Cardiff, Belfast and Nottingham for a look at what these results mean across the nations. Let's begin with our Wales political editor, Adrian Masters, who's at the Senate.
As Yasmin was just reporting, things are almost back to normal here in Wales when it comes to A-level marking, almost but not quite. So although grades are down compared to last year, down to 34% of A star to A, that's still higher than the figure was in 2019 and higher than the comparable figure in England, as we were just hearing. It's because students in Wales have had some generosity when it comes to grading. So when there's been a borderline decision between an A and a B or a B and a C, that's generally been more generous than it has been in previous years. And they've been given some information about what to revise, although they have had to study the whole of the course, unlike previous years when bits of the course were taken away to help them out. That in turn is because here in Wales, A-levels, or a large chunk of A-levels are at marking, actually happens in the previous year. So about 40% of the students' A-level grade has already been achieved. It's led some to think that students here are treated differently, either they're advantaged or disadvantaged compared to those in England. But education officials say that universities aren't treating them any differently. And things will be back to normal next year when all support will be taken away.
Well, here in Northern Ireland, 26,000 students were nervously awaiting their A and AS results this morning. Students who, of course, are being marked in the traditional sense for the first time since before the COVID-19 pandemic. Students last year were able to omit some units from their subjects. So with everything somewhat back to normal, how did Northern Ireland fare? Well, Northern Ireland came out on top of all UK nations for A star and A grades. However, locally, the figure here was down for those grades, the figure dropping from 44% to 37.5%. A few other interesting statistics from Northern Ireland today. Biology had the most entries, outperforming maths for the first time in more than a decade. And boys, well, they achieved A star and A grades, more A star and A grades than girls, but overall girls did perform better. Now, it was expected that the figure was going to drop due to disruption still caused by the pandemic, so examiners were asked to take that into account when they were marking some of the exam papers. Now, Northern Ireland exams here are marked by a local examiner, most of them by SIA. Today they said that the figures now reflect a continuing journey back to pre-pandemic grading levels.
Well, in England, all allowances were removed this year, meaning that marking was returned to pre-pandemic levels in 2019. That's despite the fact that these students didn't take their GCSE exams. These were the first formal exams many of them have taken. They were affected by teachers' strikes in England as well. And they were treated differently to their counterparts in Wales and Northern Ireland, as we've just been hearing. Here, grades are now broadly back to 2019 levels, but there are fewer higher grades. For example, last year, 8,570 students got 3A stars. That's now down to just over 3,800. So there's a wider question now of how universities and employers compare different students and judge what they have achieved, depending on when they took their A-levels. The Education Secretary has said today this is all about levelling the playing field in England. She talked earlier about how important exams are, but you can understand why in England today there are many students who are left wondering whether this has levelled the playing field or whether it's unlevelled it, depending on where and when you took your A-level exams.
Adrian, Stuart and Stacey, thank you all very much indeed. Firefighters in Tenerife have struggled to contain a large wildfire that broke out in a mountainous national park. The fire has spread across 1,800 hectares in just 24 hours, and at least 5 villages have been evacuated. The government there says the fires are out of control. And heavy rain and landslides have killed at least 72 people in India this week. Monsoons triggered floods in the Himachal Pradesh state that cut off roads and swamped buildings, trapping residents. The area remains on high alert and more heavy downpours are expected over the next few days. Next this lunchtime, how do you feel about this sound? It is, of course, the revving and popping of an exhaust. In fact, a third of us have said that they regularly hear engines like this on our streets. And today a poll has found that most drivers in the UK would welcome cameras that detect illegally loud vehicles. And it's not just because it's annoying. Research has found that road noise can contribute to serious health problems like heart attacks, strokes and dementia. 58% of drivers want to see sound cameras implemented to catch sound-polluting vehicles. By contrast, only 22% were against the idea, 20% were unsure. Well, our Midlands reporter Pablo Taylor is in Birmingham. Pablo, this is an issue which really annoys a lot of people.
Yeah, it really does, Yasmin. This is one of the roads in Birmingham which has had a big problem with noisy drivers over the past few years, mostly caused by car cruising, which, as you say, is when lots of drivers take to the streets and take part in races. Now, special cameras were apparently fitted to this road to detect those illegally loud exhaust. They were apparently fitted last year but were taken away earlier this year as part of a government trial. But a new survey out today says that 3 in 5 drivers would support the rollout of those cameras across the UK.
There's definitely a big feeling amongst the public that there are vehicles, and that would include kind of modified boy racer cars, supercars and motorbikes that are regularly disrupting the peace. And these cameras are very clever. They actually have microphones fitted to them. And when a vehicle is detected exceeding the legal limit of 74 decibels, they're triggered and they take a picture of the number plate.
Well, road noise has been found to contribute to a range of health issues, including heart attacks and strokes, but it remains pretty easy for drivers to get their exhausts modified and made louder. The government, though, says it is committed to combating this issue and says it is currently analysing the results of those camera trials and will update the public in due course.
Pablo, thank you. The dramatic England women's semi-final victory over Australia was watched by more than 7 million people on TV. And no doubt on Sunday for the final, many millions more will see if history can be written. Good Morning Britain correspondent Nithya Rajan is in Sydney.
Well, the Matilda fans are certainly nursing heartbreak after yesterday's loss, and it's captured the front pages here. I will read out one. Dream curtailed, but national love affairs just begun. That's from the Australian, and I would say that's an accurate summary of how the fans are feeling. I was chatting to a few earlier who were down here to take selfies with the replica ball that's behind me. Deep disappointment, but at the same time, national pride at how much the Matildas have achieved for a game that really wasn't very popular here to start with. They turned out in thousands in the stadium. All you could see across the game last night was a sea of gold and green, but that did not faze the Lionesses. They know how to perform regardless of whether the crowd is with them or not, and this was the reaction from the players afterwards.
Come on! Honestly, buzzing. No words. Can't find the words for you.
I don't think I can really contemplate it. We're in the World Cup final, baby. Let's go.
Just buzzing. Can't wait to see what we can achieve.
While England now face Spain, Spain have had a slightly tumultuous tournament compared to the Lionesses. There's been infighting within the team, rows between manager and players over coaching and conditions. So that's all what they are running up against as they go onto that pitch on Sunday. But England are still the favourites, and there is belief that they could edge their way forward.
I think England have got the ability to go out there and do it. I think Spain technically are a better side than England. Yeah. I think England have got the nous to get the victory, but it's about being comfortable being off the ball.
A prediction? Go on, stick your neck out.
Penalties. England winning on penalties.
Oh, well, Sarina Wiegman has said that she feels like she's in a fairy tale. The hope, of course, here among everybody that's come out to support the Lionesses and back home is that ending is a happy one for the Lionesses.
Nithya Rajan reporting there. And pubs have asked the government to loosen licensing rules for Sunday opening hours and alcohol sales for the final. Let's go live to our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks, who's at Westminster for us. And Romilly, this would be a really big boost for the industry, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Pubs are already expecting one of their busiest Sundays of the year so far when the Lionesses take on Spain on Sunday. That kicks off at 11. As things currently stand, if you're heading for your local, you won't be able to get a drink in most pubs until midday. Now, the British Beer and Pubs Association is calling on the government to relax that for one day only, saying where there's a will, there must be a way. We've spoken to the Home Office this lunchtime, who say that for the law to be changed, then Parliament would have to be recalled because MPs are currently on their summer holidays. But they are looking at other potential measures, such as pubs being able to apply for temporary event licences, speeding up that process, potentially making it free for all pubs. So it could be that if you do go down to the pub on Sunday, you will be able to get a drink from when coverage starts, which is on ITV1 at 10:15. Whatever either way, it's likely to be quite an atmosphere.
Romilly, thank you very much. And you can watch England take on Spain in the final live on ITV1 and ITVX. We'll have all the build-up from 9:25 this Sunday morning. Kick-off is at 11 o'clock. Now, a strike that was meant to start at Gatwick Airport tomorrow and last until Monday has been suspended. The planned action by staff at the company Red Handling would have affected ground handling at the airport. Members of the Unite union will now vote on an improved pay offer. And finally, we end today's programme as we began it with the death of Sir Michael Parkinson, a titan of TV. He gave us so many memorable moments and interviewed the biggest names on the planet. Here he is in his own words, talking about his career and his success.
Father loved coming to this show, but he was never quite sure I was doing a proper job. Being a Yorkshireman and a lover of our summer game, he wanted his son to be a professional cricketer. And just before he died, he said to me, he said, "You've done well and you met some big stars." I said, "I had." He said, "You made a bob or two without breaking sweat." I admitted that was also true. "Good lad," he said, "but think on, it's not like playing for Yorkshire, is it?" It wasn't, but once or twice he got pretty damn close. Good night.
He was known for his warmth and his authenticity, brilliant at asking questions, equally brilliant at listening to the answers. He led the way for all the presenters and shows that followed him. The king of the chat show, who was one of a kind. Sir Michael Parkinson, who's died at the age of 88. And there is continuing coverage of Sir Michael's death on ITVX and on our website. The latest Where You Are is next. Gamal Fanbulay is here with the evening news at 6:30. But from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Today we'll